I can of what everyone else has said. I go to college, which has sadly become a punchline in this group of people. I'm taking 2 philosophy classes. I'm an engineering major, civil engineering, but I'm taking 2 philosophy classes, and I can already tell from the first day of school that these professors and I are not going to be friends. When they talk about a capitalist system in every other line when they're supposed to be talking about French philosophy, you know there's a problem going on. Here, the interesting thing about being labeled on campus, which I am, I get labeled very quickly in classes. They say, oh, you're one of those types of people. You know, the funny thing is, and they call me selfish. I say, oh, you should be able to keep what you produce. I didn't say me, I said the person. And they call me selfish for saying it. When I think of what my grandfather did, serve in the war, I think of his father served in World War I, and his grandfather's grandfather served in the Civil War as a captain. It got me thinking about what we're doing here. Individually, we're all incredibly important to ourselves. Collectively, we can do things together. I don't want it to be an official collective, that's socialism. But we're not here to be remembered individually. We're not here for the glory. We actually are here for people that haven't been born yet. And yet we're called selfish for doing so. You know, I have a quote from Ronald Reagan, which I jotted down at about 1:30 this afternoon. And he was speaking in 1977, so this is before he was president, after he was governor. He says, if you lose your economic freedom, you lose your political freedom. All freedom. Freedom is something that cannot be passed on in the bloodstream or genetically, and it's never more than 1 generation away from extinction. Every generation has to learn how to protect and defend it, or it's gone for a long, long time. Already many of us, particularly those in business and industry, there are too many who have switched rather than fight. And it's time that some of our corporations learn that when you get in bed with government, you're going to get more than a good night's sleep. But it's true. A lot of people will say, oh, we can't change, it's America. So America's been around for 230 years. What do you mean it's always going to be the same? Of course it's not. This idea that you're somehow passing down freedom. I mean, within a generation, it went from the Interstate Commerce Clause was you do not regulate interstate commerce. Regulate meant to make regular, meaning allow it to happen, meaning the federal government cannot tell the state governments that they cannot, or that they can bar trade between the states. You can't do that. You have to allow it, was the whole point. To the next generation, where they say, if you produce feed, which is the court case, if you produce feed on your own farm, and you feed it to your own livestock, and you are somehow not participating in interstate commerce, and therefore that affects interstate commerce, so you must be regulated on your own property. 1 generation, that changed. And so this idea that somehow this is stagnant is not. Yet, I am called selfish for thinking that people should be free forever. People I don't even know. I don't even know my great-great-grandfather's name, yet he was a very important person. None of our kids, even in our own lineage, are not going to remember our names, and that's not the point. We are not here for personal recognition nor personal glory. So I get tired of people who sit there and say, I want this and I want this person who's very wealthy to pay for it for me, and I'll eventually pay it back when I become successful, and I'm not being selfish at all. You're being selfish. And professors going, uh-huh, yes, very good point. Yeah, that's an A+ paper. I wrote this paper on collectivism last semester. It was a death, dying, and religions class, and they said, write something about death and religion. I said, okay, I'll pick a religion that's killed more people than natural causes and disease. Or sorry, more people than anything other than natural causes and disease. And it was called socialism. A lot of people, when we hear socialism in America, we think it's this touchy sort of feely thing. That's, you know, it's nice, it's like motherly. More people have been slaughtered in the name of socialism than any other thing on the planet. 175 million people last century died for it. Those were their own governments. That's not even including the wars they had with each other. That's not even including the wars they financed. That's just their internal populations. And yet when we say it here, it's like, oh, wow, you're just so idealistic. When I told him that, I originally got a 0 grade on the paper. That's why I said, okay, if you want to make this all biblical, let's not. Let's go to Thomas More. He's the guy who coined the term utopia. Now, the funny thing is, all these guys are fighting for utopia. Does anyone know what utopia actually means, where it came from? No. Thomas More, Sir Thomas More and St. Thomas More of England, wrote a book called Utopia. It was derived from Latin, like everything in the church was back then. Eu, meaning not, topia, meaning earth, meaning not of this earth, meaning impossible. It means impossible. It doesn't exist. And that was the whole point of the book. What if it existed? It can't, was the whole point. Yet we use it as something that can be achieved, something that's obtainable. Something that's worth fighting for, something that's worth regulating for. And the people who want to do it want to set these things in stone. Now imagine today the class of people that say, you know what, we should make cars universal. Everyone should own a car. We should all be able to move around freely. And forget the idea that maybe if cars didn't exist, we'd be arguing for griffin transport or something, or unicorn transport. The fact that cars exist is fine. If these people existed 150 years ago, they would be saying everyone for the rest of time should have a cart and a carriage, and a horse to be drawing it. And then we would be stuck with horses, carts, and carriage because it would have been law. These people don't realize that if you stifle markets, if you stifle people's freedom, and that's what a market is, it's people freely associating with other people. The fact that I do it with currency or plastic or barter, it's still free association. I associate with my friends. We hang out. We have drinks together. Is there financial involvement? Absolutely. We buy the things. Could we associate without it? Yes. But do we still have clothes on? Yes. So freedom really is everything. Yet, everyone get out of the way. Come on. Go. Get over the side. Yet in college especially, you learn to divide things into industry. It's the stupidest thing in the world. You say, no, economics is completely separate from politics. Politics is completely separate from the humanities. It's all intertwined. Yes. The fact that I can go and buy a paintbrush and create a piece of art, that involves economics. If it's outlawed, that involves politics. There you go. Yes, and it's this idea that freedom is somehow this non-universal thing. It's given, it's distributed out. Is preposterous. The whole idea of the country was to acknowledge individual fundamental liberties, not because it was just and moral, but also because it's incredibly functional. I always want to say that to welfare proponents. Give a man a fish, something rather yada yada. They don't really remember the phrase, but they kind of understand the concept. It's more than just that. If you take away people's freedom, or you start giving them things, even if it's just to be nice, even if government is there to hug you and you don't want to be hugged, that's a bad thing. I don't want government hugging me. I don't want it holding my hand, telling me don't drive so fast. Oh, you've got to be very careful with what you write. You may get a lawsuit. And oh, that's just not sensitive enough, whatever you just said there. I don't need your help. I don't need you to tell me to put sunscreen on if we have a level 5 heat wave. I can feel it. Thank you very much. No, they really do that. They have levels of heat waves. And it used to be called a nice summer's day. Now they call it level 4 heat wave in Britain. Because they bought into a whole bunch of things that I don't think they should have bought into. Yes. And I'm sad to say that my girlfriend goes to UC Berkeley, great girl, and she wants to become a dietitian, a registered dietitian. She's taking a class right now, which is a public policy class, so you have to take it. And the whole idea is they're supposed to write their congressman on how to regulate what you eat. And how to bring the basis for it. Believe it or not. I'm being taught right now, I'm in a class that's a mandated class in engineering, and it's supposed to have a lecture series, and all the lecture series are on green, sustainable, this, that, and the other thing. And none of them are green, sustainable. We've already gone over that. We've actually talked about in a lot of engineering classes. It has no name. It recently came up out of nowhere. And they don't take into account energy input into something. They always say the energy output of it. And they say this is therefore sustainable. Regardless, these are mandated classes for anyone going into any field, basically. And we're all taught that we're supposed to regulate your lives. I'm being taught this is the way to build something. This is what you have to do in order to make it safe. It's like, well, that's preposterous. So Adobe brick huts that have been around for 1,000 years in the desert, and they're still there. What do you mean they're going to fall over? Right. But the idea that markets should not be free, the idea that people should not be allowed to do what they want and freely associate, even goes to building codes. Say there was no building codes. Would all the buildings collapse tomorrow? No. Would all the new buildings not be built incorrectly? Absolutely not. Know why? Say you built a building. Say you didn't get an engineer to approve it, and say it was really strong. Is that good for you? No, because when you go to sell that building and someone asks for the papers and the blueprints and what was put into it, and if it got certified by any independent organization, and you say no, think you're going to sell that building very quickly? Think you have to lower the price in order to make it marketable with the other guys that did hire someone down the road? Same thing with FDA. If you're going to go, say we took the regulations off of irradiating our food, and we were allowed to kill the salmonella before people ate raw eggs. I'm really sorry about the salmonella thing, by the way.